Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Crave After Hours. I'm joined, by, as always, practically, by Jack. Jack, however, you weren't here 2 weeks ago. We're doing it on every other week schedule now because of summer. But, Jack, you weren't here 2 weeks ago, so it feels like it's been a month, and it practically has. Since
It has.
I've seen you.
Yeah, no, I'm super happy to be back. It definitely is. I remember like reaching out to you, kind of forgetting that we had the week off now during the summer. Last week I was just like, yeah, so we good for this week, and you were like,
We're off
no.
this week.
No, so it's definitely happy to be back. It's weird waiting.
Yeah, it is, and I you had me scared when you said that because I had something planned for like that Thursday night, where I know Luke wasn't watching Crave. I was watching it on delay because I wanted to be out with friends on Thursday night. Oh my gosh, but
Oh no.
yeah, I know, but I remember that Thursday night being like, oh shoot. Oh no! Wait, what am I saying? Yeah, we're doing it every other week. Okay, it's all good. It's all good, Jack.
What's funny is like the inspiration for me texting you was because I know I texted you on a Wednesday, but it was because of a minor freak out of like, oh snap, wait a minute, did I just say yes to plans? I have Crave tomorrow. And then it just like turns out, nope, not technically. So it all worked out.
It is nice when it all works out. So again, everybody, welcome to Crave After Hours. This is your first time watching or your millionth time watching. This is Jack and I kind of hosting a little live talk about Crave and the message that we just heard from Derek. If you have a question, don't hesitate to text us over on like that line. This is hard because I'm pointing to the screen, where it is on the screen, but also the camera is up top and it's mirrored. Anyway, 618-221-5021. It's right there. You can text us. And even if
Famous
you're watching
number around here.
Yeah, even if you're watching on delay, Jack or I will find your text and we'll answer it on the next one, or we can answer it, right there on the text line. And it is anonymous if you so choose. In fact, it defaults to anonymous, so we're only gonna say your name if you be like, "Hi, I'm Steve Chumsky," and you can say my name. So, Jack, it's been a while. Things doing well on your end there?
Yeah, doing super well. I'm personally very excited because one of my favorite places in the entire world opened up recently again. That is first Forest Park in general, but has now opened back up. But the Art Museum has opened back up again.
Oh, dude.
And I had an opportunity to go to the zoo this week. You have to make a reservation for the hour that you want to go during. But the Art Museum's going, so I'm going to be going this weekend, and I'm super excited about that. So.
I didn't know you were an art museum guy.
Oh, I have almost become a art museum member countless times, and then I keep talking myself out of it. Like, hold up, I might need that money for like groceries and gas.
This is going to come as a shock to some of you, but I think I've talked about it on Crave After Hours. I am a very big art museum guy myself.
Yeah, we've actually talked about art on Crave, like during Crave After Hours.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Piet Mondrian is. I love his work. I love like modern impressionism, anything from like the 1950s.
You probably love
forward.
what's the exhibit at the museum right now.
What do they
it's
have
modern to Malay.
Ooh,
It's a fancy like art, like modern art and expressionist art, kind of not necessarily only inspired by Malay, but Malay is kind of like with a big centerpiece around it, and it's a bunch of just like cool modern art.
That is cool. I think one of the things with art is like people like if it doesn't click with you and you don't get what's being said by art or what's being expressed, like it doesn't resonate with you. And so like that's why I like modern art, but like you give me classical stuff and I'm just like, yeah, it's complicated, but like what is this symbolism? I don't get it.
Yeah.
But I think, and this is called a segue, everybody, that is kind of how the Bible is. And we're meditating on John 2:15-16. I use meditating half-heartedly because we're talking about it. But anyway, I think that's kind of how the Bible is, where it's like, man, you can just absorb a verse, but until you get what's being laid down and the context and like what it really is talking about, it's just going to go in one ear or right out the other, like that Cage the Elephant song.
Cage.
But 1 John 2:15-16 is our verse today, and I have it pulled up, so I'll read it, and then Jack, I'll take your initial thoughts with it. Uh, Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love the if anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world.
I think this is the beautiful, like, everything on earth. Like, so I'm gonna backtrack and just kind of say what I would, if I was reading this for the first time, what I would think at face value, and it's just like, really simply put, it's like, hey, it's kind of like the idolization Bible verse in the New Testament here, kind of going back is to the Ten Commandments, you shall have no other gods, that sort of thing. If there's anything on the in the world that causes you to like stray away from your faith, um, or anything that you love so much that it's kind of making you forget about your faith, then basically your love for the Father is absent and you're forgetting about God. So it's kind of basically at face value is like a, hey, we are, if you're a person that is preoccupied by something like money or by like lusting and that sort of thing, then you're forgetting about your faith. And yeah.
Yeah. But I think one of the beautiful things is that you read that verse, and if you're not kind of aware of the context, and it does seem kind of in direct contrast with for God so loved the world, and now they're like,
Yeah.
don't like don't live for the world. I think one of the beautiful things is that when you start to read into it and you start to kind of truly feel like God and what Jesus has done in your life, you'll realize that a lot more than you think is from God, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you start to realize that like there are things like greed and lust and um, wrath that are not from God and that are straight up sin. But like if I really like punk music, and if I listen to punk music and it brings me closer to God, then in some way God is there in my concert going experience. God is there in me enjoying things. He puts things on this earth for people to enjoy. So I think it's really interesting that like you realize kind of what all is entailed in things that come from God.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a really good point because in any situation, like no matter what the thing is that you like, there are like kind of two ways to love it. You could just love the fact that you have specifically whatever it is, or that whatever that is specifically in your life, or you can love like the fact that if it, hopefully it is a blessing, like something like punk rock music, or you can like kind of in a sense love God for giving humans the creative potential to kind of be there with it. And I think one thing is also sort of important to point out, um, about this verse is where it's not saying that there's nothing on the earth, like everything on the earth is not able to be loved, but it's specifically kind of mentioning out like anything that like has come from the world's own creation and not specifically that something that God had created himself. So at the end of the day, I'm like, at the end of 16 comes not from the Father but from the world. Like, we can love people because those came from the Father,
Ooh,
but
there you go.
yeah, and we can love the fact that he created the world, but when it comes down to the things that the world has created for itself, then that's when we need to be careful and start giving some discernment.
Yeah, and that is something too. Is you see kind of what the world has created for itself, for greed, for, and I know Derek talked on like if only I had this house, and if only
Yeah.
I did this. Um, that greed is something that you know you kind of get the feel for what it is, because when you ask yourself like, why do I appreciate the money? Well, it's because it's convenient, right? But
Hmm.
why do I appreciate going to a sports event that I like going to? Is because like it makes me happy, and I know that like here's something cool that God has put on there, and he designed me to entertain it. So you have to kind of use a little bit of discernment, because it can be easy to confuse the two. You know,
100%.
the world puts greed out there, and it is so easy to fall into it. And you know, I thought it was really neat to see Derek kind of open up on, like, no, you know, this is, I don't have my heart in the right place for this, because I do know, you know, knowing Derek well enough, dude lives in an apartment, a little tiny apartment. So it'd be, when he says he's looking for a house, I'm like, yep. I know that's true. But I think one of the interesting things about this is, you know, things that come from the Father, but not from the world. The things of the world don't lead you back to the Father, right? And that's
true.
where it is, because like when I go to a cool punk rock show, right, and I come out and I'm jazzed and I'm high on life, right, I appreciate what God has done for me, right? But when I get more money, does that, I might thank God, but does that bring me closer to Him? And I think that's a very fine balance we have.
100%. And kind of piggybacking on that, I guess the thought and a line that needs to be understood, is like, how can you like discern what could be loved and like what will lead you to God? And it's sort of like this thought of, and I think it actually goes into it in the scripture as well, but anything on the world that's just on the made from the world is not going to, like, when you die, it doesn't matter anymore. That it's kind of that sort of thing. So kind of focusing on that and obsessing over that and letting it lead us away from God there's nothing else but badness that could come from it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have like 15 cars and 20 houses. When you die, the only thing that matters is where you stood with Jesus. So
Yeah, that's so true, and I think it's something that we're going to continue struggling with, people, you know, of our age, where we're at, because, you know, like, there are a lot of people around our age who have either been laid off or fired or quit their jobs,
yeah,
right now, and it can be very easy to say, "Look, I haven't had a paycheck in like 2 months right now. I need to worry about money first. You know,
hmm
I need to worry about making my car payment right now." Um, and I'm not going to say that things like that aren't important, um, but letting that drive a wedge between you and God is not healthy, right? Because you're just going to
100%.
constantly be serving these, you know, earthly kind of pleasures, so to speak, and not growing closer to Him.
hmm And yeah, I think actually bringing that up, that's like such a good point. And I mean, I've experienced a little bit of that. Fortunately, little bit of relief being able to kind of towards the end here find a job. But I can kind of relate to that, just kind of feeling the stress of, you know, how am I going to live and survive and operate without money? And I can't find a job because everything's shut down and no one's accepting everybody. And it just kind of, it's so easy to fall into this pit of like letting the money kind of overwhelm you and take you by surprise, because something that I wouldn't say it necessarily just comes easy and naturally to me has been like stripped away, but something I generally don't think about too much, which could be bad, really. But all of a sudden has found its place in my life as now an issue, and for me at least, it definitely kind of sparks a little bit of like panic, and if not careful, absolutely it can really be a divider, because if you haven't really had to worry about, oh, how am I going to eat and drink or do anything, and then all of a sudden it's now an issue, and you don't feel like there's a way out of it. That's all you think about, and the next thing you know, you're being driven apart from God as well, and not just your normal livelihood. I think that's a good point that you had.
It is so easy in the world, like it, especially
hmm
in the modern world. And I just want to get out, like, look, I do not enjoy the modern world, but I'm not about to go dunk on the modern world, right? Like, it just kind of is what it is. But it's so easy in the modern world, when we see, media, and we see, we consume media, and hands up, I'm guilty of it. Like, I create media for a living that is also guilty of this, right? Of focusing on things that don't really matter. um
Hmm.
I'm not going to say that this is the media I create that talks about things that don't matter, but but we talk about things that don't matter, right? We listen to music that's, it's about, it's about money, it's about fame. A lot of the music I listen to is, about either anger or nostalgia, and it's cool that I can listen to these things and have the perspective of, I enjoy this. God created something that I can enjoy. That's cool. But it can be so easy to be caught up in the message of music, in the message
Yeah.
of, these TV shows, of these movies. And again, hands up, create stuff that is
Hmm.
very shallow, but it's so easy to kind of, once you give in, just be taken away in the current of what's most important. All right, well, gotta have money, right? We gotta be well off financially. Comfort is very important in our life, right? And like, I don't want to be inconvenienced by things. And it's just so easy to fall into that, because everything you consume, and even if it's not everything you consume, most things you consume kind of glorify that. And if they don't glorify it, they just feed into this never-ending spin cycle of the world, right?
I agree. Yeah, it's yeah, I like the spin cycle
The spin
analogy
cycle of the world.
because that could not be truer. Just so much unpredictability. Like in past years too, but like you look at 2020 as like the most prime example of the world being a washing machine.
It is. And like, I see that, uh righteous anger can be one of those things that doesn't bring you closer to God, even though
Hmm.
you're angry about things that are totally, legitimate and righteous.
Yeah.
But anger feeds into the world, right? It's not healthy to be angry. So there are things that, you know with the right lens you consume, but there are so many other things in the world that, like, you can't be godly and also love and idolize things that aren't God, right?
Yeah.
That aren't
Hmm.
there. I like the analogy he used where he's like, you can be a fan of the St. Louis Cardinals and root for the Yankees. I root for the Mariners, because yeah, that's cool. They don't play each other, but there's one thing you can't do, and that is live for the world, right? And I do want to get into, because a lot of the people who watch this, this is supposed to be like a small group kind of thing. A
Hmm.
lot of people who watch this, I think, and I could be wrong. Drop the text line or comments if I'm wrong. A lot of people who watch this are fairly, in their walk with Christ, right?
Hmm.
And I do want to touch the other side of that, right? Where, um, just because I don't love the world doesn't mean that I have to withdraw myself from the world,
Hmm.
right?
It's
I
true.
think that's a dangerous line to walk too. And dare we remind ourselves, Jesus literally walked with the world, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of the important part of his story.
Yeah. I think it's almost you got to kind of change. The world is not something that is what our lives must be consumed around. It really God is the taker and give what he
Giver
gives and
and
takes life.
right.
He's that person. And really the world is our tool more than anything. It's something
Mm.
that we can use, but it's also kind of these grounds of which are basically asked to fulfill this destiny and this purpose on behalf of this gentleman who died for us 2000 years ago. It's kind of our tool. It's what we can use to take advantage of this destiny that God has asked us to try to help fulfill. That's really kind of what the world is. And of course, if you get wrapped up in the tool, you're going to forget about
the
the
job you have at
purpose.
hand. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
if I have a hammer and I'm just like, man, this is a fantastic hammer. I'm never actually going to
yeah,
like, build something out of wood. Right. Like,
yeah. You're just going to be looking at the hammer, and then at some point, if you go so far, you're going to make sacrifices on behalf of the hammer so you can save the hammer.
yeah, there
Even
you go. This is a
so,
fantastic analogy, by the way. I like this.
thanks. It just I trying to like make sense of like, well, what is the world? If the world is not as important as we think it is, what is the world? So
Mhm.
I went with that. Maybe I've been watching. I watched HGTV far too much.
Oh
This
man.
point in COVID, I've watched all the things I want to watch, and now I'm getting desperate. And so I had an HGTV week, and I can't say that I am happy that that has happened, but this is, I guess, what's on my mind now.
One of my guilty pleasures, and I will give anybody $5 who can call this in advance in the comments right now. One of my guilty pleasures is This Old House on PBS.
Oh
Like
goodness.
I don't record it or anything, but when it's on, I'm like, oh, he's putting in a new newel post. Oh, look at that. Oh, what are they gonna do? I mean, that's a complicated plumbing system they have there. Oh, good one, Norm. Good one. but but yeah, dude, I get that. But yeah, so the world, it's your hammer, right? And at the end
Yeah.
of the day, you still do have to build that shed.
Hmm.
But you can't, you know, not build it because you want to save how pristine the hammer is or how much you're in love with the hammer. So Derek talked. He asked a couple questions, right? And I would like us to answer two of them, right?
Two of them. All right.
Just the two I have on the top of my head. And just kind of use that to kind of think on where we are. Is there anything in your life where God asked you, can you give that up? And you would either say no or you would have a very hard time giving that up.
Absolutely. The biggest one for me, and it's kind of found its way into two different avenues. I'm a big fan of I found kind of a niche with coaching and kind of managing and team building and that sort of thing. And that's kind of manifested itself through volleyball and also through esports and video gaming. And that is the one thing that no matter how hard I try to change the path of my life to kind of get away to simplify it away from that, somehow I always find myself back with helping another team grow as a team, and do success building and that sort of thing. And that's every time I get asked this question, without a doubt, it's definitely coaching. I used to just say volleyball because I used to only just coach volleyball, but now since I have expanded it into to esports as well, I just say coaching in general. I don't know what it is about it, why it intrigues me so much, but I just, for whatever reason, if there was one thing that God said, "Hey, you got to get rid of coaching," I think I would have like almost like an identity crisis trying to figure out how on earth I would be able to totally get rid of teaching how to be successful in a sport as a team to other people. I really do think that'd be a challenge for me.
Now, Jack, I know, you have a career path you want to do. Do you feel God calling you to do coaching in some way, shape, or form?
So that's the kind of the thought that I kind of why I always kind of keep coming back to it. I do feel as if I have a gift, a God-given gift or talent to be able to share past experiences and better the abilities of other people, kind of what coaching is. In the long run, I definitely see myself as like that is definitely something that I think one day that's where I'm going to settle in, and that's what I'm going to be doing full time. Whether it is coaching people in their walks with Jesus, I've thought about that. I've also thought about just becoming a straight up teacher in the long run. But as for right now, I need to get some experience and some things to teach. So that is where I am at. So you can't teach if you don't have anything to teach, right?
Maybe.
Maybe
I'm
maybe
sure.
you
I'm
could.
sure if I jump through enough hoops mentally, I could figure something out like that.
But no, I think that's a really good question. I think that some way, shape, or form, I could find myself uh, coaching as like that's my God-given gift in some way, shape, or form. But I definitely will tell you that the things that I'm coaching now, in the long run, I probably won't. I would say in probably 10 years, I will probably not have a hand in either of the things.
Mm.
Hopefully that of course means all going well, and God is able to help walk me away from the esports community. Not that the esports community is bad. It's just a very distracting um, token in my life that
Um,
is, something like I used to play a lot of video games, and then once I found that was an issue, I then jumped back in, and I was just like, well, if I'm not going to play because that's bad for me, well then maybe I could coach and be involved with coaching and managing, and uh, there's that. And so slowly I've been trying to walk away from that as well.
so it's actually a good example though, because this is something that, like, the playing, it was like, gonna have to give that up, right? And you had a bit of a struggle doing that though, right? Like, to this
Yeah,
point.
absolutely.
So, I think one of mine is, I'll be broad since you did coaching. I'll say, like, entertaining. I consider kind of what I do on on like a employment basis, just broadly entertaining or talking for a living, since I do like 4 different jobs.
Hmm.
But all of them involve broadcasting or entertaining or talking. And that would be something I would struggle with, because it's just kind of become part of my identity, which it sounds unhealthy, and in a way it kind of is, but I've always kind of been this talkative, like, oh, hey, I'm going to do something funny, or, if somebody's going to be the guy to embarrass themselves, it'll be me. I've always been that kind of guy since before I started doing it professionally, since before, I went to school, or I've been that kind of guy since like freaking 3rd grade is what I'm saying here. but it's weird because I feel God kind of calling me to this, this profession, this thing, and I like the opportunities it gives me to not just, do what I love, but also there's unique opportunities to, share Christ and be a Christ follower in these kind of weird communities where people don't really, that doesn't enter the equation for people. And I think if I was asked to give up entertainment, it would be a very long and hard struggle for me. But I think, like you and like coaching, there is like a calling there. There is definitely a calling there for me to pursue that in the future. One of the things that I have given up recently, because I think God is really calling me that way, is I'm not completely giving it up because I don't feel called to delete all my profiles, but I have given up almost all social media. And that's been huge in my life right now. So,
Yeah.
I was an active Redditor. I have a lot of friends through Reddit, a lot of contacts, got a couple jobs because of Reddit. I have, if you haven't been on Reddit, which, by the way, it's like the 6th most popular site on Earth at this point. Most of you guys know what Reddit is, but you can.
We're talking website here,
Yeah,
not social
website.
media. Website.
Yeah, it's website, right? But it's kind of a link aggregator, and when you submit things or when you comment on things, your upvotes, which are like likes, and they subtract your downvotes, which are dislikes. It has a dislike button, which I know everybody wants on Facebook, but
it's like when we talked about karma a couple weeks ago.
right, it
has
actually
an actual balance system of the life of Reddit.
and it calls itself karma.
Yeah.
And I'm like 112,000 in the positive or something. Like, on my phone right now, you can't really see it, but is burnt in the Reddit refresh button, on the top right.
Yes, of course.
But I got rid of that because I realized that, one, it was a distraction to my day-to-day life, to my relationships, right? Like, I'm sitting there like scrolling through Reddit. It's literally a link aggregator. So you just kind of tell it what interests you're in: Formula One, IndyCar, sports, movies, TV
Anything.
shows, and it will just give you links to news stories and discussions about
Yeah.
specifically what you tell it about. Um,
Anything. Yeah.
anything, and it never stops. It's just a
And
continuous scrolling.
I have to put a pause on our conversation here. I have also deleted pretty much all of my social media, but I have to say, and I have to give you mad props on this one, Luke, because the one social media that I kept was Reddit, because I used the awful scapegoat of the fact that that is where I get my news from,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the scapegoat that I used because for whatever reason, and something that I'm sure was very hard for you, especially like given like your investment into Reddit, and the personal connections that you've had, like I have not even been able to drop Reddit, and so like mad props to you on that. Yeah, I still haven't been able to delete my Reddit, so that's awesome.
And in the interest of being like a good and honest, Christian boy here, I still do have the accounts on that on Facebook, on Twitter. Twitter I haven't deleted entirely, but I never really used Twitter. I don't think I've tweeted in like a month and a half. Twitter, I get all my hockey jersey deals on, so I couldn't get rid of that.
Yeah.
And then Facebook, I haven't deleted my profiles. So what I do is I have to go on the computer to actually like go to these sites,
Yeah.
which is a huge barrier if you're me,
Yeah.
and I imagine if you're a lot of people. But I sensed like not only was it something that was distracting me from my relationships, but it was something that was distracting me from God, and it was just actively making my day worse when I'm on it. So giving it up was rather easy, and I'm only on it like once a week now because it's a news aggregator site. So when your boy needs news content for his shows, hello Reddit. Top stories, sort by last week. But yeah, it's something that I think that a lot of people, you guys watching included, would have struggles with. Not trying to call you out, but Jack and I did. It is social media is a big part of our life, and that is also
Yeah.
something of the world.
Yeah, 100%. And what's kind of crazy about social media? Oh, we're getting philosophical here.
Mm.
Social media is itself something of the world, and it could just be simply social media, but social media is a weird combining and aggregate of all of the other things that the world has also made, making it kind of this quintessential terribleness of the world, because you have greed being shown on social media, you have lust being shown on social media, you have everything else. Obviously, those are the two big ones that everybody thinks of. But you have literally almost everything that could distract you from loving God available and showing up on social media, and that's the thing that we are all choosing to get pulled and addicted to.
Mm-hmm. And why are they on
Oh,
social media? Here, I'm gonna drop some knowledge here
oh,
because greed, or more philosophy, I guess. Greed, lust, jealousy, anger, those are all very addictive, right?
yeah.
So that's what's on social media because you put it on there with the hopes that people will be like, "Oh, yes, yes," and you keep scrolling, you never ending, because if somebody's just going to post an uplifting message, a little cat hanging from a tree going hang in there. Yeah, whatever, you don't scroll, but when you get angry, when you see something, you're lusting after, when you're getting jealous because somebody is better off than you,
Hmm.
that's what keeps you there. That's what keeps you going. So in a way, and again, Jack and I are very much addicted to social media. It is like an IV drip of the worst possible parts in the world, just
it's
right
yeah.
into you.
It's everything that the world has created that could distract you from God being pulled into one source and one medium that you can view it through. And I'm gonna say this, like, it doesn't matter.
No, it
Just like
doesn't.
just it will not be there forever. It's not going to carry on with you like the afterlife. Social media, and it always eventually comes to an end. Look at MySpace, everybody. What has happened? What has Justin Timberlake done with MySpace?
Is MySpace still a thing?
I think Justin Timberlake tried to do something with it, but it's definitely that's my point exactly. What is MySpace now? That's gonna be what happens to Facebook eventually. So as much as you might think that your life depends on Facebook, eventually you're gonna be in a reality where it really doesn't. And
You're gonna be deleting all of your emo phase off of Facebook and Twitter.
yeah, and that's why it's so important to understand that if we're devoting time that could be devoted to God on something that is not going to last forever, that's an issue, and that's kind of what we're talking about here.
It really is. So one other question that Derek had, and I think we can actually tie this back into social media if we try hard enough here.
Wow.
Is what's the first thing you think of when you wake up, and the last thing you think of when you go to bed? And those are two loaded questions. My instinct is to go when I wake up. What's my first instinct is, do I have to take a shower? Am I going anywhere? No, the shower can wait. Do I want a food? But what it invariably was when I started thinking about it was, what do? Now you get up, you pour some milk, have some cereal without thinking about it, but then you open your phone and you hop on YouTube, or you hop on Reddit, or you hop on Facebook, and it's like, oh, what was the first thing I'm thinking of? Social media.
Absolutely. I'm gonna say the exact same thing basically, but when I wake up, there's only one thing that I do that is of semi-importance, and that is I check for, first of all, emails that are from work potentially, or or messages that are involved with the esports team that I help with. And then after that, it goes to which one of my daily YouTubers has uploaded their videos already, and which one do I want to watch and what importance, and that sort of thing. And then right after that, I go to basically hot on Reddit, and then I scroll that, and then I go to new on Reddit and scroll that.
Oh, you're a news sorter, the brave man on Reddit over here.
It is easily 75% worse than hot Reddit. So
and hot Reddit's already pretty bad.
Yeah, hot Reddit is already pretty bad. It's better than the people that sort by controversial though. So
well, there are some subs where you have to sort by controversial.
That's true. That's kind of the point of some subs, I guess.
There's a great subreddit called Banned Video Games, where it's all people pretending to be middle-aged mothers and calling video games like evil. And if you sort by controversial, it's just dozens and dozens of gamers who don't know that this is a joke. And so they're trying to dunk on like people like me and Jack who are just sitting there laughing. They're like
trolling. Yeah. And that is why the internet is terrible.
It is. But last thing, and then I was like, okay, well, what's the last thing I think about before I go to bed, right? That was the other half of Derek's question. And I'm like, let's see. What do I usually do before? What's my sleep routine, right? Scroll on Reddit for a little bit, and then I go to sleep with pretty much one of two YouTube channels. Like 90% of the time is a YouTube channel called Red Letter Media, because they have bad movie reviews, and I know every line of every one of their like 100 episodes by heart. So I'll put that on because I don't have to think, right? So what's the last thing I think of before I go to bed? Which one of these social media videos should I put on? Click, and then it's social media. It's social media in the morning, and it's social media in the evening.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. The large portion of my evening is watching the videos that I did not find important enough to view during the day. Because like I said, one of the first things I do is prioritize which of my daily uploaders I want to watch first, because based off of what I think is going to be interesting. And then after that, it is a weird hodgepodge of, catching up on messages that I've missed or things that I've missed, a little bit of Reddit. And I will be honest, even sometimes a little bit of like mobile gaming.
Yeah.
I went through a really bad phase of just mobile gaming in bed, and that is how you burn your eyes off.
Yeah. There's a reason these glasses are this thick. But,
like I had a game that had one of the biggest problems with the game was that there was a lot. You shoot arrows and you walk through levels and trying to defeat all the villains, and some of the villains or the mobs are so small, and so I would literally hold my phone like this far from my face to play it. with no lights on in my room, mind you, and just literally make sure I can see all of them so I can navigate the level. And then I would put my phone down and I'd be like, my head hurts, my eyes hurt. I feel like I have just poured hot lava all over my eyes.
Well, on that bombshell, I think it's time to land this plane. But yeah, so I would challenge everybody to kind of just think of what uh, you know God would find, what you find in your life is a distraction from God, and I'm willing to bet that you're like Jack and I, maybe not the same, but maybe not entirely different, and you'll say that. Yeah, I do spend a lot of time on Twitter and Instagram, and Instagram's a big one. Like I
Instagram, Snapchat, top
Instagram,
two.
Snapchat. Yep. So I would challenge you guys to kind of think, throughout this week, where are you being distracted from God, and what is it that's distracting you that is of the world, and kind of process on, if you feel God calling you to pull away. Jack, you have any closing statements, any final arguments for the judge?
No, actually, I would follow that up with like just write down like a sort of a list of things that you do during the day. And if that list seems to be small and it's just like four things on it, that means that you're probably focusing a lot of time on one of them. And then pick one and then try to eliminate that with some different small tasks. Like whatever one is the least important to you, maybe try doing something different. Mix it up and see how that is different for you. Maybe you even add time for God in there in place of it.
It's a solid advice, and I'm willing to bet a lot of us, me and Jack included, would find that we're down to like four things. So
Yeah, absolutely. If I wrote down everything, especially in the heat of social distancing and COVID, if I wrote down everything that I did, I could literally tell you that list right now would be I watching YouTube, playing video games, and then the small amount of work that I had to do. It's literally those three things.
yep. Uh, yeah, about the same for me as well.
Yeah.
So we will catch you guys not next week, but the week after. And then if you have a question or you want that answered or anonymously kind of, talk to somebody, text us at 618-221-5021. You can also put it in the chat and we'll come back next week and kind of look at the chat and be like, oh, hey, Steve Chomsky, that guy, put another question in. So, can be anonymous, doesn't have to be, but defaults to anonymous. So text us, call us, chat with us. If you see us in the local Walmart, say hi, but stay 6 feet away, and we will catch you guys next week. There we go.
Sweet.